All right, so I think I am all situated here. Um, Before I get started, let me just tell you guys like the purpose of this Facebook Live, and I'll also post it on YouTube. So if you go to nishasnow.com YouTube, you'll see it there a little bit later. But really, I wanted to do this because like the number one question that I get from people is, how do you do all the things? Like that's like always the question. It's like, you know, you have like this 9 to 5 job, and while I work there, I don't work on anything else. I am a firm believer if somebody pays you to like do a job, like you should do that job while you're there. So literally all my passions and all the other things that I do are done, after hours. So I think the term that people have been using a lot is like you have your 9 to 5 and then you have your 6 to 11. And so, yeah, I am really good at figuring out like my hours during that 6 to 11 period. And since that, I've been trying to get better about sleep because I was horrible about sleep. I think I told you guys this once before. I used to get probably about 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and that's how I was operating. But now I try to at the very least, get between 6 and 7 hours of sleep. So now that I do that, that means that I really need to go to sleep at 10. And so really, I get home about 6:30. So that's like a really small amount of time to do a lot of things. So it's like if you're not organized, it's not good. So let me tell you a little bit even about me, because you're probably like, okay, well, who are you and why are you giving me tips, for example, to help me get organized? So I already mentioned nishasnow.com a little bit earlier. So I started that this year, and it's NACHESNOW.com. And I also have a podcast to go with that, the Studio 78 podcast. And you can get to it from nishasnow.com, or you can just go over to like your favorite podcast app, like Apple Podcast app. If you have the Stitcher app or Stitcher app downloaded, or whatever your choice is, you could go and just type in Studio 78 and subscribe to it. So I started that this year. And the main reason I started that this year was because I had all these different like niche businesses, but then when I wanted to post things about like my love for technology or fashion or what have you, there was no venue because the things I wanted to post didn't fit there. So that's why I decided to almost create this umbrella company. And so nishasnow.com was born. But just to let you know kind of what I'm juggling with. So I have like this 9 to 5. I started nishasnow.com with the Studio 78 podcast. But what I was already doing even before that is I have a business, creativeroute.com, where I make laser cut light switch plates. And I started that maybe about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And a friend of mine introduced me to this makerspace. And sorry, it's a little flash over here. This makerspace, and I fell in love with it, and I was like, wow, this is kind of expensive. So I was like, you know what? Let me start making things, right? So then I had this laser cut business, and I needed to fit that in with everything else. And then also 2 years ago, around the same time, because I'm crazy pants, I started the Find a Fashion Truck website with my good friend Astral Riles. And if you haven't checked out her work already, you should definitely check her out. She does these beautiful handmade wall hangings. But we decided to start a business together. So we started this directory, which turned into a blog over at startafashiontruck.com. Then we created like this Facebook group, and then we also created the Can I Park Here podcast. So that was like my first podcast. And then years ago, even before that, I did, I had a tall blog, so like maybe 6 years ago, seven, maybe even now, called talllook.com, where I would blog about like tall fashion finds. So if you can imagine, at any given time, I always or have like 2 to 4 different kind of businesses going at once. And so one thing that I was going to talk about today is like, how do you um, how do you balance that, right? So, for example, like last year, what I figured out, if I wanted to start NichéSnow.com, something had to give. And for me, what that was my tall blog, even though I've gotten emails from some of my followers like, hey, we haven't heard from you, you need to post. And it's not dead, it's just dormant right now, but I had to figure out like what needed to give. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today, and definitely join in on the conversation with what works for you. But it's like, okay, how do you have a full-time job, have businesses you run? Because I have 2 podcasts. I make stuff, and when making stuff, I got to package. You have to make it. You got to package it. You got to deliver it. And I'm like really particular. Oh, hey, Ruby. Thanks for joining. This is good. So I'm not talking to myself. Definitely chime in if you have any advice. I know you juggle a whole bunch of things too. Um, so yeah, so it's like how do you do all the things? So I'm gonna just start talking about some of the steps that I take. And please, like I said, jump in and let me know, if you have any tips too. Okay. So step one is, my whole thing is like, ask yourself, like, why do you need to kind of like organize your life? Like, what's coming up, right? So, for example, maybe, I don't know, like, let's say you want to start doing calligraphy, or if you want to like start your own business where you're making stuff, or whatever that might be, you need to have a reason. Well, you don't have to have a reason, but it's good to have like some type of goal to figure out like, okay, I want to do X, and so I need to now like organize my life and time in order to make space for whatever that is, right? Um, and so I figure like once you figure that out, like what you want to do, then you can kind of move on to that next step. So for me, for example, I was like, oh, I want to start a new podcast, and I want to start a new blog, NichéSnow.com. And so I'm like, how do I do that? Because I have all the other things. So I had to like streamline, like for Creative Route, I was like, I'm only shipping stuff once a week. So when orders come in and during a week, like I might go to the makerspace, make it, but then usually on Friday or Saturday, I'm doing shipping. And then like that's my rules. Like, I can only handle so many orders, so I'm only going to have so many products on my website. And so it's like thinking through that. And I was like, okay, I have to let go of Tall Look for right now because I don't have time to maintain like 2 different blogs. So just kind of like think through that, like, what do you want to do? And then kind of the things that you might have to let go in order to accomplish that. And then after that, I have here like, then like track how you're spending your time. Because if you think about it for a second, for example, like what did you do yesterday? Like what did that time look like? And what did you do this morning? Like how do you track your time? And excuse me, not how do you track your time, but what do you do with your time? So for example, for me, like my normal day might be like, okay, I get up, and since I'm not an early person, like usually I just get up, I commute to work, I'm at work, I'm in my commute again, and then once I get home at like 6:30 or whatever, I have like a specific amount of things that I have listed out that I want to do, be it write a blog post, like practice my calligraphy, take pictures for social media, but I know how that day looks like. But even before you plan out that day, you have to understand, like, what are you doing already? Because even if you think about it, like, what did you even do this morning? Like, you got up, and what was the first thing you did? Was it get on your phone? Was it turn on the TV, right? Was it get breakfast? Did you start working on something that you've been putting off? If you said that you wanted to clean your house, did you start cleaning your house, or did you just kind of like lay around and do nothing? No, hashtag no judgment. But it's like, what do your typical days look like? Because you can't really figure out like how to change your days if you don't even understand like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so my whole thing is, if you're trying to really organize your life and figure out how to make space for something, get like one of those big calendars and like track your time, or use an app like Ding, D-I-N-G, and then actually just track your time. It might seem like a little crazy, but you would be surprised how much wasted time there is out there. Like, people, a lot of times, I read this book, they say like they don't have time to do anything extra, but once they track their time, they find out like there's a lot of time that they're just wasting, that they're doing nothing. So that was my step 2, is like, just track your days and track your time. And if you follow me on my newsletter, nishasnow.com/newsletter, like this upcoming week, I'll put out like some cheat sheets to help you figure out how to do that. Okay, so let me know if you guys have any questions. Oh, forget time. How do you have the energy? Oh, good question, Julia. So, okay. So with that, it's tricky, right? Because I'll be the first to admit, I am not the type of person that like exercises every week. I'm at least trying to eat better, and I know both of those things like help you with energy. But one thing that I have done, I mentioned earlier, is start tracking my sleep with Fitbit. And so I figure if I get at least 7 hours of sleep, then I'm not groggy or dragging. Because I find like if I'm groggy or dragging, then I'm not really productive, and then you kind of like lose that energy. And then also, I think the energy comes from doing things that, oh, hey, Chandra. Okay. This is like you're under an alias there. But yeah, but if it's like, let's say if it's things that you like to do, like usually you'll find the energy to do it, right? And I'm not gonna lie, like sometimes you just have to push through it. Like, for example, this week I was like, my allergies were totally killing me, but I had 5 orders to get out for like creative route. And so I was just like, oh my God, I don't feel like doing it. But you know what? I was like, but I got to do it. And so you just you like find it in yourself to kind of push through. Cause I'm like, this is just like a bad week. Cause you know, it's the allergies and I'm not feeling good, but I know I need to do this. So let me kind of figure out a way to do it where it's not killing me. So like, you know, one night I prepared all the light switch plates. And then I also did like all the calligraphy for my packaging. And then the next night I actually packaged it up for like shipping yesterday. Let's see, when you track your time, are you super detailed? Okay, so my whole thing with that is not crazy detailed, because that would be, I think people would give up after that, and a lot of people aren't that organized where they can track things down to the minute. So when I say track time, for example, this would be an example. Like tomorrow, right? I know I'm going to go and go to this pop-up shop in DC. So if I wanted to organize my time or figure out like what I'm even doing tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to try to, I know I naturally get up maybe at 7:30. So from 7:30 to 8:30, I'm going to dedicate that to nishaysnow.com. And that can mean I'm going to do a blog. I'm going to do, edit my podcast or whatever. In actuality, that'll probably be from 7:30 to 9:30. And then at 9:30, let's say if I know I need to like wash my hair that day and do my hair, then I can be like, okay, from 9:30 to 10:30, I'm gonna dedicate that time to doing my hair. From 10:30 to 11:30, I'm gonna actually get dressed in order to go out to my event. And then 11:30 to 5, I might say like that is my free time. And then after 5, maybe I'll say, from when I get home at 6, I'm going to use from 6 to 7:30 to do research. And from 7:30 until I go to sleep, maybe I might mark that as free time in order to like watch TV or do something. So let me know if that kind of answers your question. So it doesn't necessarily have to be down to the minute, but I like to like track things in hours. So if I was trying to track like what I did this past week, like yesterday, it would be, commuting to work 6:30 to 7:30, at work 7:30 to 5, in traffic 5 to 6, or really probably 6:30. And then I got home and I was going to go to the movies, but I didn't. And so, from 6:30 to like 8:30, I actually worked on my projects. And then from 8:30 to the time I went to sleep, I caught up on my Grey's Anatomy. And I like did some other things. So it doesn't have to be super detailed, but you just at least need to know like what you're doing with your time. And like, let's say, once you track your time, you'll know like how much time am I doing on certain projects, how much time am I spending watching TV, how much time am I spending with friends and family. Like you'll get a better sense of like where your time is going. Now, in some rare cases, I will say like sometimes you do need to be super detailed. So for example, I met with this one guy that has his own business. And when I first started thinking about nishaysnow.com, he was like, Nishay, you need to really track every moment of where your business hours are going. Are they going right now to creative route? Are they going to can I park here podcast? Like where are they going? So then you realize like what's kind of like taking up your time. And so when he told me that, I used the app Ding. And from there, I did go down to the minute only because time is money. So I wanted to see like truly how much time I was taking to do certain things. So that was kind of like a long answer, but it's like detailed, but not crazy detailed. And then, so we talked about like, and if you guys have any questions, just throw them in there. But we talked about, okay, step 1, determining why you want to get organized and what you want to accomplish. The step 2 was like figuring out how you're currently spending your time, if that's with a calendar or just writing it out or what have you. And then step 3 is like reorganizing your time. So for example, Ruby, like even though you might not have like this super detailed list, but you have like a general idea of where your hours are going, like from there, you then redo your schedule. So a lot of times, like next week, I know exactly when I'm going to edit podcast episodes, when I'm going to do blogs. I know when I'm going to like watch TV, which sounds crazy, but I have like these blocks of times that I've said like, okay, during these times I'm going to do this. And and when you do this, I feel like you need to truly write it out, or you need to use a tool like Calendar 5 in order to do that. And so let me know if that makes sense. But, it's like once you determine that, it just helps you like, then you know what to do with your day. Like today, I knew at 10 o'clock I was doing this podcast. And I know, like, after the podcast, I'm going to spend an hour taking this video, putting it on YouTube, like doing a blog post for it, right? And then I know after that, like, I'm going to go out and go to the movies with my husband. But then I have time scheduled tonight to, like, work on just some, like, fun hobby stuff. Okay. Oh, so say something throws a wrench in your plans or schedule. How do you recover? How do you readjust? Okay, so which happens all the time, right? Which the thing about it is, think of it as like, I think of it at least as like modules. So let's say tomorrow morning I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm gonna dedicate that time to editing podcasts or taking a class on Skillshare or whatever that is. And let's say something comes up, like my husband Sam, maybe he's like, ooh, Nishay, there's this thing going on and I really want to go to it. We should go. This is we don't want to miss it. And so I'm like, you know what I'm saying? You want to be able to like go to the thing. And so what I would do is then look at my schedule and then I would write it in somewhere else. And so, but I'm writing it in or putting it in the calendar somewhere else to make sure that it still gets done. So it's just like constantly readjusting. But the problem though is if you find that you keep pushing something off and you never get to it, that's when you have to like really look at your schedule again and figure out like how you can actually make time for it. Or you just have to be, to me, like more strict with it and make sure that you do what you say you're going to do. So I think like if something's pushed off once or twice, like, okay, that's pretty cool. But after that, it's like, if you're pushing out 4 or 5 times, if that task list, like, or the list of things you want to do just never get done, then yeah, it's like you have to reevaluate that schedule or just really make sure that you force yourself to like actually do it within a certain period of time. So let me know if that got to it. And then also I wanted to talk about, and this might kind of get to your question too, is like, I feel like sometimes things throw people off because maybe, did that get to it? Okay, perfect. Sometimes people don't get to the things they want to do because like this, there are like little things that day-to-day activities that get in our way. For example, like I have here, like get your mail every day. Like for example, I know folks who let their mail like pile up for 30 days and then eventually they just either never get to it or they have to dedicate days to opening their mail. I couldn't even imagine a life like that, for example. But my whole thing is like, I get my mail every day and I give myself 15 minutes at night to open it up, figure out what's should be recycled, what's maybe a bill that I need to pay, and what's something that I need to look at later. And it just takes 15 minutes, but I do it every day because I don't want things to pile up. So maybe if you don't have time to do it every day, at the very least, like something like that, you should do every week. Like you could be like, Saturday morning, as soon as I get up, I'm going to look at my pile and go through it, and then it's done. Another thing is like email. I always tell people like I have an inbox zero course because email is another thing that people let get out of control, and then you end up either missing events or missing important things like a bill is due. And so figure out a way to kind of get that under control too, so it's not consuming your life. And for me, it's like, I dedicate like a couple times a day for my personal email, and I'll go through and I'll like delete a whole bunch of things that I know I don't want. And then the other things, like even if I don't have time to read it, then I tell myself like, okay, at some point this week, read it. And if I haven't read it in like a week or two, I just go ahead and delete it because that means I'm not going to read it. So it's like figuring out how to get that under control, get control of your social media. We all have problems here. But Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever your poison is, like that can suck up a lot of time too. And so, especially if you have like a business, so I try to dedicate like certain times. Like I'm kind of bad with it, but I, if I notice myself getting like, for example, sucked into Instagram or Pinterest, then I just tell myself like, okay, get off, right? And also like if I have other things blocked, like if I know I'm gonna be taking a skills share course, or if I'm going out somewhere or whatever it might be, I tell myself like, don't look at social media, don't get sucked in. So you have to figure out like what that balance is for you too. And then I already talked about sleep, but I'm telling you guys, sleep is a game changer. I wish, I wasn't using my phone to record just so I could show you guys like the Fitbit app, and show you how poor my sleeping habits were. Like literally I went from like 4 hours a night of getting sleep to now 6 to 7. And that really does help with energy. Um, and then I have a system for capturing like your task and your ideas. I feel like that helps keep you organized too, because you're not like, oh, what did I do? Or I forgot to, whatever it might be. Like I have an app. I have one app called To Do, and I use that for like grocery lists or anything that I know I need to buy. And then the Calendar 5 app I mentioned, I use that app actually for bigger things, like things I need to do for NishaySnow.com, things that I need to do for CreativeRoute.com. So everything is right there. And then just to get crazy nerdy, and then I use the Notes app too. And that's like whenever I have like a big idea, I just kind of write those ideas in there, and at least they're somewhere. So it doesn't mean I need to act on them, but then I know that they're located somewhere. And then the last thing I have for like just tips for sticking to your schedule is like when you get up on a weekend, like immediately do something. So like let's say if for some reason my body wakes up at 6:30 or 7:30, I don't like mull around and lollygag. I immediately go downstairs, I make me some oatmeal, I make me some tea, and I go on my computer. I don't even turn on the TV. And then I go on my computer and I'm like, okay, what do I need to get done? And then I just knock all the things out that I want to get done, be it take a class, write a blog post, whatever it might be. And then a few hours later, like I've accomplished all these things, and then I have like the entire day left to do whatever. Either maybe I have something planned, or maybe I can just do nothing, but at least I've used those first like 4 hours of my day to only dedicate to doing X, So yeah. And then any questions there? That I might be talking kind of fast, but I didn't want to hold you guys up for too long. But those are my tips. Like, so getting all those things under control, like it really just helps you stick to that new schedule that you've decided to create for your life. And then try to stick to that schedule for at least a week or two. And then if you find it's not working, then readjust. And just really like try to force yourself to stick to the schedule that you've made for yourself. And then I just want to like mention just a few tools to have, and I've mentioned some already. But having a desk or wall calendar is great. So then you can really see like, okay, I've committed to doing this stuff. Or a planner might work great for you, or a journal or a notepad. So for example, this is like, I call this like my Nishay Snow journal, right? And it has like all the ideas, right? So anything that I come up with, it's right here. I'm going to do a class probably on how to create a vision board. It's probably going to be like a vision book, but like, for example, when I was coming up with my Studio 78 podcast logo, like my inspiration actually came from anthropology. Oh, Sherry says, I'm going to try this. Thanks. Oh, thanks, Sherry. Let me know if it ends up working. Oh, Ruby, where do you find cool journals? Okay, so I'm kind of like a journal snob, but you don't have to always get them here. But I love anthropology. Oh, hey, Carol. I love anthropology and I love paper source. And so if you like just have this love for like beautiful journals, to me, those are the best places to get the journals. Other than that, like sometimes I'll find some stuff on Instagram, and usually people sell like maybe journals on Etsy, but most of the time my journals come from those two places. Or if I see something online, I'll see if the journal is sold on Amazon. And you can't really see here, but I probably have like 20 different journals. But active journals, I probably have like two or three. But I'm telling you, this is a lifesaver because whenever I need to go back to something, it's all right here in this book. It's like my brain is in this book. All my ideas are in this book. And you don't have to operate like this, but I, oh, Ruby says you should make one. Actually, I'm in the process of making a journal, a self-discovery journal. I've given myself a month to do it so I don't obsess over trying to make it super beautiful, but thank you, Ruby. I think that's a great idea. And so if everything works out, like you guys will see like a journal from me to like help you guys at least discover who you are, because I love them so much. Okay, so a journal or a notepad, I mean, and literally it doesn't have to be fancy. So I have gotten things from like Target too. So I think I got this one. One second. It's like just like this owl one from like Target or something like that. And whenever, for example, I'm doing my podcast episodes, I just write, as people are talking, I write notes down. So it gives me ideas on what to ask them. So like I said, I literally have different notepads and journals for different things, and they don't have to be fancy. Like here's my old one, and this one was like a free one from a conference, and it's like completely full, right? And I haven't thrown it away because I know like I might need something in here, so I usually just keep like my old journals on like a shelf because I might use them in the future, like, you know, to see maybe what I was thinking about a year ago or what someone talked about a year ago, and then use that to do some kind of idea. So desk or wall calendar, planners, journals, notepads, and have like, I say if you don't already do this, like at least just start out with one, because what you don't want is to have like a bunch, and I think we're all guilty of it, where you only you start it and then you fill out like 3-4 pages, and then it collects dust in a corner and you never use it for anything. So maybe just start out with one initially and continue to use that. Sherry says, I always tell my daughter to write everything down because she always has like great ideas. Exactly. And I feel like you should capture it. Like, I think some people have this philosophy like, oh, if it's a good idea, you'll remember it like 3 months from now. And I'm like, but not really. Cause like for me, I'm coming up with so many ideas, it would be impossible for me to remember all of them. And so that's why I'm a big believer in writing it down. So Sherry, I think that's like excellent advice, because I've found gold in old journals that I've had from years ago. And then as far as like apps, I would say Calendar 5. It's a paid calendar app for iPhone, but I love it, and it integrates with my other calendars, because since I have like other businesses that have their own calendars, I need a really good calendar app that integrates everything, and I also need a good calendar app that has a task list. So I love that app, but there are other free apps out there too. You just have to kind of pick your poison, like find one that works for you. I mentioned I use the Native Notes app. So for example, Sherry, like if she doesn't like necessarily having a physical journal, you could just say even, you know, having her put her ideas in the Notes app on her phone. So it's at least captured somewhere, because I capture my ideas there too. And for me, just so you guys know what my process is is I'll capture it in the Notes app, and when I get home, um, usually most of my journals are at home. I'll come back home and then write it in the journal. So then it's like captured in like the appropriate journal. But that's me just nerding out. I had mentioned the To Do app. Other apps that people use are Evernote and Trello. I don't really use those except for Evernote. You guys know, like maybe on Instagram, you'll see like where I use like all 30 hashtags they say you could use. I don't come up with them every single time. It's all in an Evernote, and I just copy and paste them when I post something. So I like Evernote for that. But there's other tools you could use. And then just software, you know, Google has a great calendar too, and an app to go with it. I use Google Docs and Google Sheets for my businesses. People can, like Astral and I, when we do Find a Fashion Truck, we can be in there at the same time. We have all of our processes for our business in the Google Docs. So for example, like if for some reason I can't do something, she knows exactly what to do, and vice versa. And so I'm a big fan of that. For even NashaySnow.com, for example, I'm writing a post on how to do podcasts, and I'm going to share like my Google Docs with folks that are interested on how I kind of like organize my time and do podcasts. But I use Google Docs and Google Sheets for everything. And the best thing about it is they have apps for your iPhone, and I believe for Android too. So whatever you put in there, you can access all the time. So for example, I have like a Google Excel sheet with all my favorite links. So if somebody's like, oh, Nashay, what's that website? Or if I'm trying to figure out like, what's that website I really like? I just go into my Google Sheets, and there it is. And then I also use tools like CoSchedule to schedule out social media posts. You can use MailChimp and ConvertKit to send out newsletters. Like that's how I send out my newsletter. And yeah, so that's kind of like, that's it though. I have my last tip here. Decide on a method that works best for your style, like something sustainable. So I've mentioned a lot of different things here, but really you need to find out what works for you. And maybe it's just starting out slow with just using an app, or maybe just using a journal and then starting to integrate multiple things. But you need to find what works for you. And you'll know it's working if you stick with it. I mean, of course, that's like a mindset thing. Like you have to tell yourself like, okay, I'm going to give this a try. But if you find like you're doing it week after week, writing in your journal, putting stuff in your calendar, actually doing the things you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, then you know that your system is working. But that's it. Let me know if you guys have any more questions. If you're not signed up for the newsletter already, please head on over to nashaysnow.com/newsletter. Like I said, I'll make sure to, I'm going to come up with some cheat sheets with all the things that I've talked about. And so if you're signed up for the newsletter, you'll get that. And usually I send out something like every couple of weeks. And then I was just like, done. Thanks, Chandra. And also, like, if you guys have any questions around this, let me know. If there are any other topics, too, that you want me to cover, let me know, too. And, of course, I have the Studio 78 podcast. And then, so Carol says, in the newsletter, will you... I think the last part of your sentence got cut off, Carol. But yeah, if you haven't already too, like please sign up or subscribe to the Studio 78 podcast. And I think, Carol, I don't know if it got cut off, but if you're asking in the newsletter, will I like include like some resources? The question is, or the answer is absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me for my first Facebook Live. I'll make sure that this gets posted on YouTube also, because I'm over on YouTube. And I'll try to do another one maybe in a couple of weeks. All right? All right. Thank you. Take care. Bye.